Okay, welcome to the seminar in finance and accounting. So I'm Matt Bridger. I'm the instructor here. And what we're going to do in this video is just briefly walk through the syllabus. I'm going to try to keep it brief. Usually, often it's common to give a brief introduction of myself. I'll tell you more about myself through the class, but I have a couple decades experience in industry and teaching. On the industry side, I've worked in electricity trading, asset-backed securities, mainly in auto loans, but also did an interesting project in pharmaceutical patents, and then I've worked in bank balance sheet modeling. So in some of this, the idea of this course is going to be you're going to write some original research. So some of my background in research and also in industry will might help you, think of a topic and write your paper and so forth. So that's me. What I'm gonna kind of jump around the syllabus a little bit, but the structure of this course is, so this is a seminar, and what usually happens is a seminar is this is a kind of a first course in doing research. So students generally meet, discuss research papers, and then work on a topic of their own. Right. So that's the idea of this course. There's no text. I'm going to have you read. I'm going to assign you a research paper, which you're going to read and summarize, and then you're going to write your own original research paper. But the structure of the course is on Blackboard. So the idea here is one, big point I'd like to make is all questions on your topic, what you want to do, where you're going to get your data, all these kind of questions should go to the discussion board. And the reason being is, again, usually a seminar, if it's in person, you meet and discuss, right? So this is an asynchronous course. We don't meet, it's online asynchronous. So we don't meet, and there's no set class time, right? So to get that kind of discussion, it should happen on the discussion boards. Don't worry about anybody taking your paper topic. It's fine. Two people can write the same topic, and if you're posting on it, I know that you're the first one working on it. So definitely use the discussion boards. If there's any sort of question of a personal nature, then obviously you can send an email. But definitely, we're mainly discussing this on Blackboard. Actually, D2L now. We switched from Blackboard to D2L. So on D2L discussion boards. Okay. Online office hours. Once we start to get going, on your paper, every once in a while, some students will want to meet. Happy to do that. We'll probably meet on either Discord or Google Meets or something like that. The functionality that we have within our course isn't great, so I find it easier just to meet on Google or, like I said, Discord. So we can talk about that. One thing I will mention is, and I'm going to talk about the specifics of the course in a second here, but just broadly, if anyone does want to meet, make sure that you've done sort of a preparation prior to it. Just like you're working somewhere, you don't go into a meeting and just say, I don't know what I'm doing or something like that. You're ready to describe what you've tried, what you've done thus far, what your approach is, and then then I can help. Usually this is not a problem in this course, but I want to avoid students getting into it. This is mainly with undergrads, as they get into sort of a meeting and say, well, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, you got to be more specific. What have you tried? That sort of thing. Okay. So let's start going through a little bit more of the syllabus in terms of what your deliverables are. Topics covered. You don't have to worry about this section so much. This is kind of just appropriate topics in the course with papers. You might review some of these papers. So, but you've been assigned a specific research paper, so you don't need to go through these. So what are the let's see, grading. So there are mainly two components of this course. That's your paper summary, and then your research paper. So for your paper summary, right? So the idea of this is your first. If you look into D2L under content, or actually under assignments, I've assigned you a paper. So the idea is first you go in and you summarize that paper, right? And the idea of this is for you to see how a research paper is written, right? When you're writing a research paper, you use the same format that everyone else uses. You're going to be writing an empirical research paper. So you're going to read this empirical research paper, and you're going to see that it has an introduction with a literature review. It has a data description section. It has a methodology description section. Then it has a section covering results, and then a conclusion. That's what you should have. You don't deviate from that. That's how everyone writes it. That's the appropriate format. The reason being is that anyone reading it knows, it's easy to read the paper. So and then sometimes people will ask me, well, what's an appropriate citation? That citations are going to be important. So you can see, right? So in your paper, who do they cite, right? I'll mention this a couple of times throughout the course, but when we do research, we're building on others' research. So there should be appropriate citations. This person's done this person's done this, so I'm building upon that and doing this, right? So, these researchers answered this question, but it still leaves this question open, so that's what I'm going to tackle. That's how you frame your research in the introduction and literature review section. So you're going to do that, and so you're going to cite appropriate research. I don't care about the format of the citations, MLA versus whatever the others are. It's completely irrelevant to me. I write. Usually, this isn't. You don't have to do this, but I supply the paper in LaTeX format with a BibTeX reference file, and I can just change the header and change it from MLA to APA or whatever. So I don't care about the style of it, but you do have to cite appropriate sources. So this is huge. You don't cite like Investopedia, right? You don't cite. I can put anything I can write anything on the internet. Just because something is on the internet doesn't mean you can cite it. It has to be sort of a reputable source. Peer-reviewed journals is the idea. I'll talk more about citations, but while I'm talking about it now, what you should be citing generally: peer-reviewed research, Journal of Finance, Journal of Financial Economics, or Review of Financial Studies. Just look at your paper and look at where they're citing. You can also cite Archive and SSRN, but those are not peer-reviewed yet. But it's okay to throw a couple in there, right? But you want at least like 7 peer-reviewed articles, and you can throw a couple of Archive and SSRNs in there. You generally want to stay away from any sort of newspaper like Wall Street Journal, though if you just for a kind of background, you can cite a Wall Street Journal article, but that is that is not sufficient. Sort of that sort of thing. That's just background, and then you absolutely don't cite things like Investopedia. Okay. So that's the idea of your summary. You're going to summarize the research paper, and I have an outline on your summary, right? So how to summarize a paper. So what you're writing here is what's the purpose, and this is how you read a paper. When you're reading a paper, you say, what's the purpose? What unanswered question are they going after? What analysis method did they use? Mostly you're going to look at empirical stuff. What was their conclusion? All conclusions have limitations, though. I conclude this, however, I couldn't control for this. I couldn't control, so there might be limitations, or there's always some sort of limitation. Any assumptions that they've made, and then further research, right? So that's you're gonna supply just one summary. So you have a research paper, and you're gonna submit your summary of that research paper, and you're gonna post it to a discussion board. So you'll have discussion boards. You're gonna post it to a discussion board for everyone to see. You'll also, to get the 35 points, make a post on AI and ML. This is something I've been doing for a while now. So this post you can think of as a short email to your boss, right? So I linked to a couple McKinsey papers. They're right here. And so just, if it's not, I'm not going to read this and sort of like grade it. I just want to see a couple, what your thoughts on AI and ML. Like I said, I've been doing this for quite a while because I've been working in this area for years. It's obviously over the last year, it's gotten huge. So particularly, applications of AI in accounting and finance. What you'll see in these McKinsey documents is I used to have to say that AI was making a case for looking at it. Right now, I don't really have to make a case for it, but my case that I used to make was there's a lot of investment in it. So whether it works out or not, you want to look at it. Now, I hardly have to make the case. All right, so that's the 35 points. towards your final grade out of 100. The second portion, the major portion of this course, is your research paper. So those 35 points you should get, right? That's the idea of it. So then we turn to your research paper. There's 5 points to just post your idea. So I have a due date. I want to see your idea. So the only way your idea by September, so the research paper summary, the summary of other people's research in AI is due September 13th. The 20th, you should post the idea of your paper. So the only way to do poorly in this course is to wait to the last minute, because as we talk about, you're going to have to gather data. There's some sort of things that they might go quickly, but they might not, right? So by waiting, right, you're increasing the probability that you might not get it done. And I don't give incompletes in this course. So basically, you just don't want to wait to the last minute. This is true of anything, because again, in writing the research paper, it may go quickly. Some research papers I've written go very quickly, but some can take longer. So I want to see a post about what your idea is with the description of your data. I'm going to talk about that in a second, by September 20th. Right? That's to make sure that you're on the right track. That's to keep you on schedule. And then December 3rd, the research paper is due. So this 5 points is that paper idea, and then the research paper. The research paper is due at the end of the course, right? So December 3rd. Good. And like I say here, you don't have to wait till September 13th. You can get that done and start working on your research paper immediately. This research paper summary shouldn't take but an hour or two. So good. So let's get into the meat of the course, the research paper. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but first let me just tell you the right approach to the research paper. Sometimes some students will say, well, I'm really interested, and I really feel strongly about this, topic, so I want to kind of do something here. And right off the bat, that's the wrong way to approach this. This is work. You have to do research because it's your job, right? If you're working in industry, right? I've had to look at the relationship between wind farm profitability and certain macroeconomic factors. So you're doing research stuff, right? So the idea of it is you do research because it's part of your job. It's something that you have to do. So you want to approach this by saying, okay, what is an unanswered question that I can answer? That's it, right? And notice I'm saying that I can answer. So the first step, so you're going to do an empirical analysis. I have here the different types of research, but purely theoretical, you don't want to touch that. It's heavy math. And a survey, in the past I've let students try this, but it never works out well because you have to cite like 50, 60 papers, and so you're going to do an empirical analysis. Most research is empirical, right? So getting back to what research can I do, right? That is dictated on your data. So you start with what data can I get? What open questions or what interesting questions can I answer with that data? That's the approach, right? One, it's a job. I have to do something. I'm not going to get sort of emotionally involved in this. What data can I get? What research can I do with that data? Right? So a lot of times, I say this all the time, but every semester students will be like, well, I want to do something on, I don't know, maybe it's like personal financial planning or something, and what do people do? And so I say, okay, well, how are you going to get to, what data are you going to use? Well, I don't have any data. Well, then you can't do that topic, right? In other words, there's a lot of research I would absolutely love to do. However, I can't get the data, so I can't do the research, right? So first thing to think of is what data can I get, and then what research can I do? And what I would recommend, because this is likely your first, research paper, is I would not use. Some students have successfully generated their own data set and written a great paper, and that is outstanding, right? The safer bet is to use maybe like stock market data. So in here, I have a lot of ideas. So if you can't think of an idea, I have ideas for you here, right? That you could just do. So a lot of these tend to focus on maybe like if you want to do research on, there was a regional banking crisis. The regional banking crisis, largely driven by uninsured deposits, but interest rates rose. Uninsured deposits left some banks and they failed. These uninsured, deposits are particularly problematic at regional banks because larger banks, the Bank of America, J.P. Morgan's, well, the government will bail them out. The Fed will bail them out. Fed is not exactly the government, but leaving that. So uninsured deposits are not so scary if they're at the, J.P. Morgan, but if you're at a regional bank who the government will let fail, then, so these deposits tend to leave very quickly, and it caused a regional banking crisis in 2023. So you could look at, the relationship between regional regional banks versus, regional banks versus very large banks, how they reacted to the increase in the federal funds rate. The federal funds rate, jumped from like 0 to 6%, quickly. So you could look at the stock market reaction to mid-sized banks and large banks, and you could use ETF data for that. Large banks, you could use the XLF ETF, and mid-sized banks, what would be an ETF for that? Maybe IAT. Anyway, you can find an ETF for regional banks, and so that data is really easy to get. And then you can kind of think of the methodology and write that paper fairly quickly. So I would stick to easy to get data. You can look at the difference between any industry. Another one students have done in the past is, which did any industry react faster to the COVID? Right, so you could look at, did energy industry react faster, or did maybe consumer cyclicals react faster, right? And you can use ETFs. XLE is the energy ETF. Consumer cyclicals, I don't know. You could look that up. So ETF data, you can look at the performance of entire industries. Data is readily available. Also, it's very easy to get sort of I worked in electricity trading, so it's easy to get electricity market data, though it's harder to work with. But if you want electricity prices around New York, Pennsylvania, California, or Texas, these are really easy to get. Though, if you're not familiar with this, it might be hard to work with because you might not understand the data. But I would think of data sources that are really easy to get that you don't, maybe financial time series that you don't necessarily need to create. In other words, what's harder to work with is financial statements. So if you want to say, okay, well, I want to gather a bunch of financial statements and make my own data set, that's a little tougher. I do have a data set of bank financial statements that you can use. So it's all bank call reports, and I build a big panel. This is cross-sectional and time series data. You're welcome to use that. I will warn you, however, that to use that data set, you need to use Python or R, or something that can handle large amounts of data. Excel won't handle it. So you can only use that if you're ready to jump into Python and R. If you don't know either of those, then I would stick to something that you can do in Excel. All right. So yes, another kind of point on the research papers: add something new to our knowledge on the topic. It's not to say what others have done. That's a survey, but again, you have to survey a lot of stuff, and we're not doing that. And then not to say what you think may happen. So sometimes people say, well, I think, Bitcoin will go up in the future. Well, that's not research. That's like a marketing thing. That's, a brokerage might put out a marketing piece about, what they speculate they think may happen. It's there's as many opinions as there are people, and so just, again, what would get you a very bad score on this paper? Where would you fail this paper? You do a bunch of charts and you say, I think Bitcoin's going to go up. That is not research, right? There's no empirical methods there, right? We'll talk a little bit about empirical methods, but also it's not, what we want to do is create a hypothesis test, right? So a hypothesis test might be, I'll give you an exact example. We'll go, regional banks are more sensitive to federal funds rate changes than large banks. So what you can do is you can estimate a beta coefficient on the regional banks, estimate a beta coefficient on the large banks, right? And then do a t-test to see if with the alternative hypothesis that the beta on the regional banks is greater than the beta on the large banks, right? So you know, run a couple of regressions and you set a specific hypothesis test, and then you know, accept or reject the null, right? So you'll be able to say, well, there's, you know, I didn't find any evidence. One of the way that you say your answer is that I don't, you know, I find evidence that regional banks are more sensitive to, you know, we never conclude, we never prove, we just find evidence in favor of our hypothesis, right? So we can find evidence that, well, they're not more sensitive or they are, you know, so that's, and we've done a formal hypothesis test, a t-test on these coefficients. So that's research, right? Just doing a bunch of charts and saying, okay, well, I think it's going to go up, that's not research, right? You're not held to, you know, who knows if you're right. You haven't found evidence of anything. You just have stated an opinion based on some charts. So we do want some specific statistics, and we do want a hypothesis test, right? We're going to do a t-test, right? Some sort of hypothesis test. Good. So required components of your empirical paper, you know, literature review, hypothesis, right? You know, this is the hypothesis you're going to test, right? A data set to test the hypothesis, a statistical test of your hypothesis, and the correct interpretation. So in our example, our hypothesis, right? Regional banks are more sensitive. Data set, and this is what you're going to do in your 5-point post to explain these. My data set is going to be, you know, ETF return data, right? For XLF, and then I think it's IAT. I might as well. Let me see if. Yeah, iShares Regional Banks, IAT. So I was right on that. So yeah. So I'm going to calculate returns for IAT, and you know, so my data would be, you know, IAT, XLF price data, which I'm going to convert into returns, and then federal funds. Yeah, so I should mention, when I'm saying beta there, I'm not saying beta with respect to the market, I'm saying beta with respect to the federal funds rate, right? So you could do like a factor model, but anyway, so I'm saying beta with respect to the change in the federal funds rate. So yeah, so you know, my hypothesis, my data sets, you describe that price data, and then my statistical test, right? So I'm going to estimate this beta using a regression, right? And then I'm going to test whether they're equal or one is greater than the other, specifically whether IAT's beta is greater than XLF. And then the correct interpretation of it. So the idea is sometimes people get to this point and they'll say, okay, well, you know, have this really high t statistic, really low p-value, so I accept the null, which is the wrong interpretation, right? You want to reject the null, right? So you know, just a correct interpretation. What I will tell you is, if you interpret it incorrectly, I'm not going to knock your grade down too much. You should get it right. But the idea, what I really want to see is the hypothesis data, and then that you've attempted some statistical test on it. If you kind of flub the statistical test and don't do it properly, it's not going to hurt your score too much. One of the things that students often do is they'll run regressions on prices, which you never do. You calculate returns and run regressions on returns. So it might be the change in the federal funds rate and the percent return on XLF. All right? And then you can include, you know, maybe returns on the market in that regression. But you're using with price changes. So, you know, if you use prices instead of returns, it's not the end of the world. But you want to have, you know, at least an honest attempt, right? And then, you know, if there's an honest attempt, you're good. Okay. So I'll let you kind of read through this. Again, here's notes on literature review, what you should cite, how to find things to cite Google Scholar. Yeah, so this common structure, everything follows. Charts and figures, yes. Well, you know, one thing here. You should generate them. Sometimes students will like take a chart off of Yahoo Finance or some chart that somebody else did. I don't want to see charts that somebody else did. You do them, right? This is, yeah, I don't know what else to say there, but you should be generating the charts. Paper length. What I basically want to say here is you don't want to write too much. Writing a lot is not necessarily good. It often means that you're unfocused. So you're kind of writing a letters paper here, which is a short paper. So definitely make sure it's, you know, try not to go over 14 pages, right? What I'm looking for is not a lot of writing, it's focus. This is my hypothesis, this is my data, this is how I'm testing it, and this is how it worked out. Right? This is not a lot of writing. Sometimes students will try to write their lack or hide the lack of idea with a lot of writing. That's so the more you write that is useless, the lower your grade is going to be. So, and I'm going to talk about this, maybe more videos, a lot of discussion board posts. So, what'll generally happen is you'll post your idea and then we'll have a conversation on discussion boards about your idea. So a lot more. So to that point, definitely read other people's posts, right? So as other people post their idea, read it and read my response to it, so you don't make the same sort of errors if they make an error, right? So and again, it's not an error. It's more like I'm trying to help you think about your topic. So definitely post your ideas early and then read other people's, and then the paper should not be a problem, right? Good. So here's some other ideas. So I have like maybe some ideas on COVID-19. Banking analysis, high frequency trading. You could do any of these. Some of them might not be great. Some of them are old. Like this is old. I wouldn't touch it. But none of the surveys. Don't do any of the surveys. But there's some ideas here that ETNs. Yeah, I mean that might be somewhat interesting. You'd have to think about your methodology on this. Again, I'd think about kind of the looking at whether an easy thing to do is whether one industry is more sensitive to some factor than another. Bid ask vary by firm size. You can get some SEC data. So this might be what you might want to do is look at some SEC data. Look through here. There's some interesting stuff, and you might be able to do an easy cross-sectional regression, because I think in this SEC data they have bid-ask spreads, and they have the firm that it's for, and then you would just have to figure out how to get the firm size. They might already have the firm size in that data set, or you would just have to match it on firm size, and then you can, of course, do percent bid-ask spreads, and you could do a simple, regression and test for a significant coefficient. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there. So that gives you a good idea of what what is required in the course and how to think of the research paper, right? And again, I wouldn't worry about doing something great. I've written a lot of research papers. Some of them turn out real well, some of them don't. Some of the ones that I think will do well do poorly. Some of the ones that I don't think will be hit a high journal actually hit a very good journal. So what I would look at this is we're going to do some interesting analysis, and it really shouldn't take that long, right? It should be I'll end by saying most students get an A in this course, right? So I wouldn't worry too much as long as you sort of make an honest attempt and doing research. I should add into this. It doesn't matter to me whatsoever whether you accept or reject it. No, you could get to the end of the paper and be like, I found nothing. That's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that, right? Finding nothing is useful, right? So don't worry about the result. Just make sure that you're kind of hitting those major points on how you write a research paper, and then you'll get a great, you'll get a good grade. You'll get an A. Good. I'll leave it with that. Any questions? Please feel free to post it to the discussion board. Anything personal, email me. I hope the first week of the semester starts off well. Have a great day.